Hey everybody, I'm Greg Soul and this is Why Am I, a podcast where I talk to interesting people and try and trace a path to where they find themselves today. My guest this go around is Dennis Scott. He's won some Grammys and Emmys, but as he says, nobody cares about your resume. How does one balance a career in music production, extremely busy? I guess you start a Beatles tribute band and then get them a Grammy nomination. Of course, exactly, that's what you always do. This guy has a work ethic that honestly just exhausts me mentioning it. But wait, before we jump into the episode, I quickly want to remind folks that if you join the Patreon, and that's patreon.com/YMI, you get access to our warm-up exercise, the Fantasy Restaurant. So in here, we build their fantasy meal in their fantasy location. No rules apply. We laugh. I judge very loudly at all of their various choices. It's really a good time. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dennis. Dennis Scott, thank you for joining me on the YMI podcast.
Oh, I have been looking forward to this all week. I'm ready. Give me your best shot. Put me in there, coach.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I'll do it. I'll see what we can work out. You are a first for me. So you are the first person that ever found me and said, "Hey, it sounds like it would be interesting to be on your podcast." So I was so excited to have you on. I just got to say that right off the bat.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I was intrigued by what you do and how you do it. So I'm just been biting my fingernails, waiting for the day to arrive, and here we are.
Well,
thanks to the miracle of technology.
Hopefully it's just as weird and awkward on the inside as it is on the outside listening to it. So here we go.
Well, except the live audience, they don't hear them. I'm sure they're clapping in their hearts.
Oh, I edit them in later. Don't worry about that.
Oh, good.
Perfect. All right. So what I like to do whenever I'm starting out is we do a little fantasy here, a little role play, not the restaurant, just something else. So generally we're standing in line somewhere. So you and I are waiting at Starbucks. We're going to grab something, I guess. I'm not necessarily a coffee drinker, but I like tea. So I'm there. The line is moving really slow. So we start up a conversation. I tell you how I am a photographer. We talk about that for a moment. Now it's your turn to reciprocate. So Dennis, who are you?
Well, am I talking to you, or am I talking to some beautiful woman who's standing next to you? Because that could make a difference.
Well, you could look right through me if you like.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's good. I'll speak a little louder so she can hear me, and I'll say, well, Greg, I'm a two-time Grammy and Emmy winner for my work in children's entertainment, and I'm very lonely. Please. I mean, you have to get that out quickly, otherwise, people lose their interest. But if it was just you and me, I said, yeah, nice to meet you. I do work in the music industry. I'm a musician. I'm a songwriter, a producer, and occasionally I'll shine shoes. It depends on how business is.
Yeah, I usually say other duties as assigned, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever I have to do. So that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of information really quick. So,
right. And by the way, you mentioned you have to do other things. So this is a quick little aside story, but after I won my first Grammy, I came home and thinking, oh, this is great. The phone's going to ring. And, now I'm a man of leisure. And all of a sudden my wife said, did you take the trash out yet? I said, what do you mean? Why would I take the trash out? Grammy winner. She said, no, you got to take the trash out. So I learned quickly that it's not all that it cracked up to be.
Grammy winning trash removal expert. I get it.
Exactly. There you go.
And obviously I did a little research on you, and you were nice enough to send me a bit of a bio along with it. But that first Grammy, you got that in 1982. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
So,
yes.
To be perfectly honest, I was probably right about 1 year old. So that goes back.
Me too. I had to crawl my way onto the stage.
So that's just my way of saying you've been at this for a minute. This isn't something that's new to you. You've really been in this industry for a really long time. But what interests me most is that not only have you been in the industry for a long time, but you've been making money and been able to support yourself this whole time doing this, right?
very lucky to be able to say that I do that.
So somewhere in there, I saw you had a little snippet. What was it? You said something like that children's entertainment is highly specialized and lucrative. I would have never. I assume highly specialized. That actually makes sense to me because it takes. I would think a certain type of personality and somebody who can be empathetic with children, right? Because you have to put yourself in their shoes to see what they would be interested in. But the lucrative part kind of surprised me. Like I would have never thought that you could really just earn a living just doing children's entertainment.
Well, the lucrative part didn't apply to me.
The industry
it
as a
applies
whole.
to people like, or people like Alan Menken, who wrote The Little Mermaid and Aladdin and or everything else. I'm kind of in the middle ground there. I fall in between the cracks, but when I say lucrative, maybe actually, to be honest with you, I think somebody helped me with that bio, and I think she put that word in there. I don't think I would have used that word. I would have said, if you can keep working from job to job and have enough to pay the bills and occasionally go out for that fantasy meal that you spoke of, then I think it's all
Has
good.
that always been your goal? Is just feed myself and make sure I got a roof over my head and keep doing the thing I love?
More of doing the thing that I love and hope that the rest turns out okay. But from the time I was a child, I was singing and I was performing. And you may have read that I was a child actor growing up. At age 7, I was actually on Broadway in the chorus of a Broadway show. And to me, that was perfectly natural. That other kids went to school. I did that.
Age 7, that is very young. And it makes you wonder, it's like, and it was such a long time ago. I mean, even when I was 20, age 7 was such a long time ago to be able to remember stuff. But do you have any vivid recollections from that time period?
I do. That show that I spoke of, it was at the last show that Noel Coward, the famous English playwright and composer, and it was with a woman named Elaine Stritch, who, if you guys are into nostalgia, you could Google her and you'll see that she was on Broadway and films and all these other things. And I do remember one little episode because Elaine Stritch was known to like her drinks, and I was in the chorus with about 4 or 5 other kids, and she would invite us down to her dressing room, and she'd give us little glass of this sparkling beverage, which we thought, oh, this is some sort of nice juice drink with bubbles in it. But no, it was champagne, and we just had fun together. I mean, it didn't get out of hand, but it's just at the time I wasn't even thinking about it. But now, while I'm recollecting it, it was kind of a special moment to be having champagne at age 7 with Elaine Stritch on Broadway. In an Noel Coward show.
Oh my goodness! So age 7. So at that young, you didn't book the audition and go up there and do all that on your own. So I guess your parents were fairly supportive of this sort of thing.
My parents were great. Now my mother was not overwrought backstage mother, as some are portrayed in film and TV. She actually hired a woman, a next door neighbor, who would take me into the city on the subway in New York, and take me home afterwards. So, because my mother had 2 other kids, so she didn't want them to grow up dysfunctional. So that's right. I was enough for them. But she also she'd kind of drill me on my learning my lines and things like that, probably which was to the detriment of my schooling, because we had this one conversation in the car. We were on our way to an audition, and I hadn't really mastered the months of the year. And she was appalled, what do you mean you don't know the months of the year? And she just started, all right, we're going to learn those right now. You better get them right. And otherwise, no more auditions, no more show businesses. So I learned quickly then.
So Were you, was it a single mom situation? Was your dad around?
No, my dad was there. My dad was, he loved musicals. He loved singing, and he would sing to us in the car, and we would learn all these Broadway songs and eventually, when we were old enough, they took us to see shows, and I got to see the great Ethel Merman in the
Hmm.
original production of Gypsy. I got to see Carol Burnett when she wasn't even, well, she was starting to do television work, but she was in a production of Once Upon a Mattress where she played the princess. And can you imagine seeing a young Carol Burnett on off Broadway? And as fate would have it, maybe 4 years after that, I was hired to be in a production of The Music Man
Hmm.
in Dallas, Texas, the Dallas Summer Musicals. And the show before us was a show called Calamity Jane. And
Hmm.
Carol Burnett was the star of that. So the producer of my show said, he got us tickets to see it right before it closed, and we went on. He said, would you like to meet Carol Burnett? I said, yeah, whoever that is. I was still pretty young. Uh, and took me backstage, and I got to meet with her. She was great. And just, you know, it means a lot more to me now to think about having that experience. And, when you're, at that point, I was probably 9 or 10. And, I thought, well, this is cool. I know she's important. I know she's funny, but,
Did
that
you
was
think to
it.
yourself that
So,
this is an important thing that I get to meet this person, or was it just like, sure, I'll just meet this person? Yeah, whatever.
no, after seeing the show and seeing how great she was and how comedic, and I could sense this
Mm.
is a special talent. And so I was very happy to meet her. Um, and in the same time frame, when I was in The Music Man, the role of Harold Hill was played by Eddie Albert, who a lot of people will remember him from Green Acres. He was the star of that. I'm trying to remember if the Green Acres was on at that point. I think maybe it was. And but he was so down to earth. I would hang in his dressing room, and he would talk to me and about regular things and about the
That's
business.
interesting. So for the
So
Dallas Summer Musicals, did one of your parents come with you? Did both of them? That's cool.
my mom did, yeah, yeah. And I think my father came down finally, to see one of the shows,
Yeah.
but he was working, 7 days a week in the furniture business, so he couldn't leave. And I guess he was also. That's a great question. Who was taking care of my brothers? Oh, my younger brother came with us, but the older brother did not. You know what? I'm going to find out who was watching them. I probably, and a babysitter during the day, and my
That's
father
cool.
was there at night.
So did it?
I feel like I should be lying down on a couch, and you're my
We haven't gotten
psychologist.
that far yet. Um, well, no, it's like interesting to me. Like, so, because I know when you're that young and you're doing a perform. Well, for one, you started pretty young. So if your first one was at 7, and this is 9, so you've got a little bit of this under your belt. I guess you're a little bit more comfortable. Were you still getting nerves and stage fright and things like that, or was it pretty much old hat for you at that point?
No, I think
Really?
I get more nervous now because I perform. I have my own Beatles tribute band called the Wanna Beatles, and we can talk about that more later if you want. But uh, when you go on, there's a little moment of hesitation or nerves, as you say. But I think when you're at that age, it's
Hmm.
still kind of play to some degree.
Yeah,
It's
and I
fun.
guess especially when you start really young,
And
it's like this thing you've just sort of always done, huh? Do you think your
yeah,
mom got
I
more
think
nervous
so.
for you
I
than you
mean,
did? Yeah.
probably so. Probably so. But you're making me think of this letter I just came across by accident. Both my parents have passed, but I found this letter my mother wrote to my dad. Apparently, it was like after opening night of The Music Man, and there's this big song that the character I play sings, and she just said, "This is what your son was meant to be," and
Mm.
she was very heartfelt, and I could tell that it meant something to her because she when she was in high school she liked acting in the shows. She was on in the Thespian Society, and that's probably where I picked up some of that um, sub level message of show business and acting. And from my father, I picked up the music. So
That's interesting.
here I am.
So you're on a whole different level. I was talking to a theater director not too long ago, maybe a few weeks ago, and we were talking about theater kids. She was saying there's kids and then there's theater kids, and you're like a theater kid on steroids.
Maybe. I don't know. I I think I know what you mean by theater kids who are very single-mindedly focused on doing that. Um, I think it was more laid back for me. I think I enjoyed doing it, and it was more fun. It was playful. It wasn't like I need to be in front of an audience. I need to be seen. I need to be recognized. I don't think I had that. My parents kept me very down to earth.
Down to earth. Is that a nice way of saying they made you take out the trash still? Yeah.
Yes,
Gotcha.
that's probably true.
Thought
Yeah.
finally.
At home, there were no, I wasn't waited on hand and foot. I got the spaghetti dinner like everybody
cool.
else in the family.
That's cool. And so was I mean, just like with our kids, we're always having to run them this place, that place, kind of moving around. Was your mom usually the designated one to like, make sure you got over here, make sure you get over here?
You mean
Yeah,
for
all
going
that
to
stuff.
auditions and things like? Well, yes and no. I mean, there were times she would, but I think for the auditions she was more hands-on, but um, she also had this woman who would, pitch in and take care of getting me someplace if I needed to be. But
Mm.
auditions are not every day, so there was a little bit more
Do you remember a
flexibility there.
time, I guess, when you felt like she was kind of slowly backing away and letting you sort of take the reins on that stuff?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I think gradually it happened. I think when I was approaching teens, I was a little bit more proactive. There's a newspaper that would come out in New York called Show Business, and that's if there were auditions, you don't go to the page where it listed what was coming up. And I did have an agent who, fortunately, would get me in on some of those auditions so that I didn't have to go to what they call a cattle call, where there's one role to be had
Oh,
and a
wow.
1,000 people show up, and you're waiting from 6 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, still waiting for your audition to come up. So I did start having to do that as I got older and in my teen years, and I had one foot in music and one foot in the acting, performing career. So I started to take myself to those auditions, and I'd do the homework and find out what was coming up and what might be right for me. Um, and there came a point where I went to one of these cattle calls, and I looked around me and I saw all these people, who probably were better looking than I was, and probably were more talented at acting than I was. And I just said, I don't know. I think music is really more
Hmm.
where I need to be. That plus an acting teacher in college I was doing an improvisation, and she stopped me in the middle of it and said, "Mr. Scott, I want you to look at all these people in the classroom. Do you think any one of them enjoyed what you
Oh
just
my
did on that stage?"
gosh.
And, but she was, it sounds awful, and it was awful, but she was right. When you're a kid and you're playing the role of a kid, chances are you're going to be convincing. But when you're older and then you're trying to play some more sophisticated role in a well-written play, you have to have a different set of skill sets. And I don't think I had that. I had other things, but not that. So that's where the
Hmm.
transition came for me,
So
which is good. I'm glad
right,
I
right.
got out
So
while
there
I
was
could.
never. It doesn't sound like there was ever like you. I guess you sort of said earlier. Never this big call, this big pull to you from one direction or another. It was just always sort of a natural progression, I guess, for you. You just sort of grew into this.
Yeah, I think I did. I loved music. I loved the theater, and I loved being a part of it. And it's great to be able to reminisce and to tell my son, here's look what I did. and then he can look at me and say, well, great, I don't want any part of that, because he's finishing college, and that's how he feels. I said, well, wait a minute, what about all this music I've created? Don't you could be my publisher, you could keep my legacy going. He said, yeah, thanks, Dad, but no. So, which is the way it should be. He's going to find his own path.
You just facilitate, and they go whichever direction they're going to go, huh?
Yeah, but I kind of helped him to go in the opposite direction, because one day I showed him this check I got from a company that collects your musical royalties called Harry Fox, and the check was for 1 cent. I'm not kidding you. I mean, it's over there. I could go get it. 1 cent. And I've been meaning to frame that for a while, but I showed it him. He said, oh, so this is the legacy you were talking about? And then I couldn't convince him. No, it's not all 1 cent checks. Some checks are better. But by that time, it was a done deal.
For like career musicians, that's something that's always been kind of spooky to me, is the idea of feast or famine. You know, it's like this couple of months I may get some really good checks come in and some really good royalties, and then, you know, I may hear crickets for the next couple of months. And so that always just inwardly, like I could feel my chest tightening. Like that makes me cringe.
Well, you're exactly right. That's the nature of the business. I mean, to some degree, I guess it's true for, you know, people who are, you know, well-known celebrities and artists, but more so for people who are in that middle zone. And what you learn to do is you wear a lot of different hats. For me, I was playing in wedding bands. And now I play in my Beatles band. And now on the side, some years ago, I started a one-man children's act because a friend of mine said, you should be doing that. And I said, okay, I'll try it. So more of that. And then occasionally I teach music at a temple nearby. And then I get assignments to write parodies for people who are having a wedding or a roast for somebody. And so I write these funny parodies because I was brought up on people like Alan Sherman. You know, so you just wear all these different hats, and at the end of the month, you look and see how much you've made and said, okay, well, we can pay this month's mortgage. Good.
So yeah, but you're talking about wearing a lot of hats. I've noticed, you know, just kind of digging through your dirty laundry here of your past, that you seem to be very busy. It seems like you are very driven and focused and stay really busy. Is that an accurate assessment, or am I way off the mark?
I think it's probably accurate. I am not a laid back person. I'm always waiting for the next assignment. Of course, when you're doing an assignment and it's intense and they have this incredibly hard deadline, like I need 20 songs about whales and I need them by next Thursday. I need them written and recorded. You take a deep breath and say, can I do this? Can I do this? And it's hard. And while you're doing this, why did I accept this job? This is crazy. I'm not sleeping at night. But then when it's over, it's like, oh, well, that was pretty cool that we were able to make that happen. So it's that yin and the yang, I guess.
In that scenario where they come to you and they say, you've got to do these 20 songs and all this, and it's a tight deadline, what's your favorite part of that process? Because there's obviously some part that you really enjoy. Obviously, you know, the stress of, am I going to be able to do this, is not a favorite part, I'm sure. But what parts do you really enjoy about it?
I think it's the satisfaction of knowing that you can accomplish something that is to some degree insurmountable. It's like, for me, it's my climbing of Mount Everest. I mean, can I? I think I can. I think I can. The little engine that could. That example I gave you is really not so far-fetched. I was working on a children's TV series that was aired on PBS called Noddy, Noddy. And they forgot they were filming the production company, was filming in Canada as I was writing the songs for the next episode that they'd be filming. And it was a cycling of, having the music ready for them. And then the next week they do the next episode and the next episode. At the end of the series, I had written 103 songs for the show. But in this instance, they had forgotten that they wanted to do the Christmas special. And they were filming it the next day. Let's say today is Wednesday. They were filming it on Thursday. And they didn't have the Christmas song. And they called me like on Wednesday morning, said, we need the song. I said, great, when do you need it? Tomorrow. And said, okay, well, do you need all of it tomorrow? No, we need all of it. So, I mean, you just have to put on blinders and say, okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to write the song now. There are guys who say, I wrote a song in 5 minutes and, God sent me the words, and I said, that's great. When I call God and say, I need some words for the song, he's usually out to lunch. So but the bottom line is that this is the kind of climax of the whole thing, got the song written, got some musicians in, got the singers in, got it recorded, got it mixed, and I had to get it to FedEx. I actually drove to the airport and got to the desk. I'm out of breath and say, here's my package. And said, oh, well, you just missed them.
Oh, no.
I said, what do you mean I just missed them? I did something very bad. I drove my car next to the tarmac, and I saw the FedEx plane, and I ran out onto the tarmac, and I said, please take this package. And they did, and it made it. And, I'm a little exhausted telling that story, but it happened. And, that's, I guess, where the drive comes in. People say I'm not good at taking no for an answer. In fact, how do I say this nicely on TV and broadcasting? The guy who plays drums in my band says that when somebody tells me no, like, no, we don't need your band or whatever, a rejection, he says I get aroused when somebody tells me that. And I mean, physically he's wrong, but emotionally he's right. That does happen. What do you mean you don't want the band? Why wouldn't you want this band? It's a great band. We'll do a great job for you. We work cheap. What else do you want? So,
I like to think, never say no, right? Just give additional information. Like, instead of saying, like, if somebody would ask for something, I would never say no. I would say, yeah, that's possible, but it'll cost this astronomical amount of money, right? It's like, so, give reasons, and then we can work. Don't just say no. Right. I need some additional information. You gotta fill me in here. I like that. I like the idea of not taking no, because to me, no is never the answer. There's always something behind that, and if you tell me that, maybe we can work through it. So I like that mentality.
Yeah, I think I learned two things from my mom, and one was it's okay to tell a little white lie occasionally, and that worked out good for me because before I had done The Music Man, I didn't have too much on my resume, so my mother padded the resume and said, well, he did the show elsewhere, a year ago. And in those days, you couldn't look it up on Google to see if this is a fact. But I ended up getting the job because she padded my resume. And I said, well, isn't that bad? And she said, no, it's a little white lie. And then she also taught me, don't take no for an answer. Like that. So
a little white lie is okay.
I am with you. You probably should have said no to me when I said, hey, can we do this? Can I be on your show? And then I would have come back and said, why can't I be on your show?
I had to make you go away. I get it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Like when I did the first Mr. Rogers album, I produced, for your listeners, I produced a tribute album of Mr. Rogers, but it wasn't easy. You would think, oh, that's no brainer. But I had to go to the Mr. Rogers company, and we wanted to get their blessing to do it. And they were very slow at responding. And the procedure to get them to approve my doing this album of Fred Rogers songs took a year. And I think at the end of the year, they said yes, just to make me go away. I truly believe that. I think they said, all right, Dennis, if we let you do this album, will you stop calling our office? And that's what happened.
That's interesting. So something else, persistence, something else, I found it somewhere when I was digging around. One of your bandmates said something like, when Dennis asks you for something tomorrow at 8:15, you better have it for him tomorrow at 8:15. So I don't remember what it was in reference to, but I was thinking, yeah, that sounds like somebody who's pretty driven, got their stuff together, and expects you to be on the same page as them.
That's true, as unfair as that may sound. Well, in the band that I'm in, this Wanna Beatles, I mean, I'm more of a showbiz kid, as you said, but these guys are more, laid back musicians, and I'm the one who deals with booking the jobs and, getting the information about getting equipment there and the sound system and all that. So they don't live my reality. So I think when I say, guys, at least I need to know, are you available to do this? I don't need to hear the answer, in 48 hours, a week from now. I really need to know now, or at least within the hour. So now we have a calendar. When somebody has a conflict, they put it on the calendar and I can see it.
Yeah,
but
I can 100% appreciate that. I'm maybe not to that level you are, but maybe not too far off. For me, it's as long as you clearly set expectations, right? As so long as everybody clearly knows your expectations, then you're okay. I bet some people that just assume you'll know all of this minutia, and I guess after you work with them for a little while, you figure it out. But there's a few bumps along the way to that. Yeah,
indeed.
That's interesting. So you're sprinkling little interesting things that you've done here and there. And so I know I read a little bit about your oh goodness, which thing should we talk about? There's so many different things. So
Mr. Rogers would be nice.
Yeah, let's do that.
To talk about. Unless I'm getting ahead,
no.
Getting ahead of myself.
I think the first Grammy you got in '82, that was done in conjunction with Sesame Street, right? Okay.
Correct. That was kind of my first experience producing a album that went national, on sale everywhere. I'm working with Sesame Street, but before that, I was producing my own little demos of my songs with my 4-track recorder at home, and that was fine. But they asked. This is an example of the never say no idea, because I went to work for Sesame Street, not paid, but I was trying to get their attention to use me, and they said, well, why don't you come in here and put on a tie and just get on the phone and see if you can get celebrities to be on this Sesame Street country album, which we have in mind. So I would do that. I would go in every day for a number of weeks, and I made calls to all these artists, Dolly Parton, Willie Nelson, all these people, saying, we have this upcoming album, would you be interested? And when I finally got 4 people, the man who ran the record label, he said, great, do you want to produce it? And that was the magic moment where it was like, sure, never having produced an album of this caliber. So, but I learned quickly and took what I knew and then surrounded myself with very talented people who made me look good. And that's the
so you
secret
jumped
to
out
success.
of the plane and built your parachute on the way down.
I love that. I'm going to keep that.
I mean, to me, that is like one of the quintessential truths of life, is just say yes to things, because I mean, they don't have to be as driven as you. You're going to be able to figure it out, right? And did you reach out for help from anybody, or did you just kind of figure it all out on your own, or like how did you actually get all that together?
Well, I think I had the fundamental things. I mean, I knew how to record. I just hadn't had the experience of working with high profile people. Well, I did, I guess, as a kid actor, but not in the recording studio. So I think I did my due diligence. I researched, what recording studio to use, and I was, like I said, surrounded by very capable people. And my first experience coming to Nashville, watching these monster musicians, you hand them a piece of music, it's got numbers on it, and they play it down the first time, and it's brilliant. It's like, how did that happen? And it just got better and better as it went along. And I found that the celebrities I were working with were pretty cool people, and we got great recordings, great performances, and
so they task
the
you
rest
with
is
finding
history.
these celebrities and asking if they want to, join this. And also, obviously, your perseverance paid off big time in that. But did you just look them up in the phone book? Like, did you, you know what I mean? It's like, how do you, like, I've tried, so through this podcast, I've tried to contact lots of people, and some people are extremely hard to get a hold of. So I'm just, and they aren't even like major, mainstream celebrities most of the time. So I'm just curious how you would go about finding these folks.
While we're talking, I'm looking for, okay, here it is. So a good example of that on the Mr. Rogers album, the Sesame Street was kind of a training ground for the albums that came, where I did the same thing, where I had to find artists who were going to participate. And it's easier now than it was back in '82, because now there's Google and there's LinkedIn, and you use all these little backdoor ways. If I find somebody who works with this, say it's Barry Manilow, and so you find, oh, well, Barry Manilow's sister-in-law is on Facebook, so let's see what's going on there, and that leads you to another place. And sometimes no matter what you do, you can't get to these people. But I've found that just time and perseverance gets you there. And like, I don't know if you can see this. So this is these are the people I called to get on the Mr. Rogers album. And if you see it close up, here's Dolly Parton, here's James Taylor, here's Kelly Pickler. Kelly Pickler ended up being on the album. So it was, but this goes on for pages and pages and pages and pages of all these people. And I look at this and I say, golly, was I out of my mind or what? But that's why it took a year, because the reason there are all these pages is because not everybody said yes, so you have to move on. And then there are the people who are thinking about it. You have to wait. And then there are the people who don't know. So anyway. Oh, and then the people who say, well, I'm not the person you need to be talking to. And well, who is? Well, we can't tell you that. So then you're starting over again. So I'm lucky that the people who ended up being on, for example, the Mr. Rogers album, they're the ones who had their heart in it and wanted to do it. But it was the recording part of it is almost easier in some ways than the pre-production
like
of
logistics. The build-up is always the most difficult part, especially for somebody I would assume who's been in music as long as you have been. I guess playing the music, recording the music, that's probably the most natural part for you. It's everything else surrounding it. Although comparing yourself to the rest of the musicians in your band, who are more, I guess, more or less true musicians, you really are more of a businessman masquerading as a musician, huh? Maybe you're an accountant masquerading as a musician.
Wow. Well, you found out your
true heart's desire.
Deep, dark secret. Well, the thing is, because I had one foot in theater and show business, and even though I took guitar lessons, and I always just got just good enough to play the gigs, to play a Beatles song, to play, We've Only Just Begun, whatever it is at a wedding. I could sing pretty good, and I knew all the songs, I knew all the words, I knew all the chords. But compared to the musicians here in Nashville, people who I get to work with, there's no comparison. I would not hire myself to play guitar on one of my own sessions. I mean, occasionally I'll throw in something that I know I can do that will help, but as far as the heavy lifting, I give to the the A players or the B plus players. And I think I lost my train of thought as far as, yeah, so the business part of it, I mean, I do spend time doing that. I kind of wish I didn't, but I've always been kind of a one-man operation. And it's worked out fine. So I don't see myself as having a staff of 5 people. You know, occasionally I have an intern who'll come and make some calls, but you know, they can't do some of the things that I know I can do. So
is it tough for you to relinquish control of certain aspects of the projects? Like you're yeah, well, no,
yes, doctor.
I might be projecting because this is how I would be and how I have been in the past is, you know, if there's certain parts that are just sometimes super important, then I can't relinquish control. And in the past, it's been not only the parts that I'm really good at or creative at or, you know, exceptionally, you know, learned on or focused on, but then it starts creeping and it becomes, you know, well, this piece over here, which I honestly don't like doing, but I'm okay at it. And then this piece, and so then I have to, it was the long path for me to learn to start letting some of that other little stuff go. And I'm just curious, is that part of it for you? Is just like, I want to maintain that control?
I think I've developed the need to be more in control. I think in part of it's because sometimes people don't step up, and then you all of a sudden you find yourself backtracking to try to get what needs to be done in a hurry. And so you develop this thing, well, if I do it, I've got control of it. I take responsibility for it. So I think that does happen. But I think I'm starting to ease off that a little bit now. Not much, but a little bit.
Hey, man, we get better by millimeters, right? Not feet or miles or anything like that. I get it. Like I 100% understand that. So something else I was curious about is like when you're contacting this volume of people and you're just going through, does that ever, you know, when you get a no, does that ever hit your ego, or is it just more fuel? Like, well, that just means there's another person I got to find one more.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts my ego. It's disappointing to know that, you know, I've got 2 Grammy Awards and an Emmy Award, and to some people, you know, it doesn't matter. In fact, I don't think that matters that much to your credentials or not. They might get you through the door a little bit, but they don't always help you land the job or the sale. Yeah, the only person who I may say has disappointed me is Willie Nelson. There are 3 albums I've approached him to be on, and he's not he personally, but his representative has turned me down, and I never even gotten on the phone with his rep. I always speak to his secretary or his assistant. So Willie, if you're listening, this is your last chance. You know, to all the girls I've. No, anyway. But
yeah,
I don't know if that answers your question, but
well, you know, I just sometimes I wonder because occasionally when I do things, you know, I invest part of me in the process, right? And so it's sort of representative of me and how I see myself. And so it's like, you know, I get rejection after rejection. Sometimes it drags me down. And I'm just curious, like if you've found the formula for insulating yourself from that. I definitely would love that.
Wow. Well, I mean, some of that is you know, so human to be affected by that, and but once you get over that initial rejection, you have 2 choices: either you know, kind of stay with that feeling, or you either move on to somebody else, or you come back and say, all right, I'll show you. And you know, you pursue it till you can't pursue it any further, which could lead to other kinds of frustrations. But, and I think what I do is kind of a mixture of both. If it seems like there's a little light that can be pursued, a crack in the door, then I'll take it further. And sometimes it's good that I did that. It produces results. And other times it's just, you get to a point where even I have to say, no, that's it. I've not done as much as I could. And then move on to the next thing and hope that you don't have a repeat of
I've
that.
started learning to just see it from, well, I mean, it's something that I've learned here later in life is like my most precious commodity of everything I have is time, right? And because it's so limited, and I have to start realizing like everybody else, it's the same thing for them, and generally I'm a stranger coming out of nowhere. A lot of times I ask for warm introductions, but if you don't get one, no big deal. But yeah, whenever you're shotgunning, invites to all these people, it's like, well, I mean, it's just a calculation on their part of, I've got this limited resource and I have to use it sparingly. So I've removed myself from sort of like my personal feelings from that equation, because it's always a struggle to find people, because I always want to make my seasons last as long as I can. So I just keep asking and asking and asking, trying to build up people. So yeah, I totally get that. You at least for me, I had to sort of change the way I look at it and think about it. But I like the direction you come at it from.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about your Grammy, I was curious about your first one. So correct me if I'm wrong, but if you get a Grammy nomination, you get invited to come to the ceremony. Okay. And so
you do.
What was your thought process? Like, were you even expecting? Like, did that come out of left field?
Well, I was not expecting it. I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. I don't know if I was even following the Grammys at that point. But when we made it to the finals, I think back now, it's so different, because now you can post your music on the internet. People can see it and evaluate it, and people who are voting members of the Recording Academy can assess it. But back then, the only thing they did, they had a little gathering one night, and for about 4 or 5 hours they would play all the finalist songs or snippets of them in each of the categories. And it was just like a handful of people. Maybe there were 40 people, 50 people gathered there in New York and probably in Chicago and Los Angeles. And that's, how do you get this message out to the voting membership so they can at least give your music a shot? So to me, it was really surprising that we ended up doing so well. There were, in that year, if I remember correctly, there was a Disney soundtrack. I think it was the Hound and the Dog, or the Dog and the Hound. And, the Disney name carries an awful lot of weight. I mean, probably more than Sesame Street, because they've been around longer. So I was pretty certain they would win. And it was one of the situations I sat there saying, okay, don't get excited. Be glad you're here. Be glad you got this far. Not going to happen. My parents were sitting next to me. And I said, it'd be nice. I told God, it'd be nice for them. So maybe he listened, because, they announced my name and I ran up. My mother let out this huge scream. I'm still partly deaf in one ear because of it. But it was great because, my parents, well, if you're a musician or, in the industry, it's like, you wonder, well, do they really get what I'm doing? And, do they think, oh, Dennis is off playing his little music stuff? But I knew in that moment, they said, oh yes, this is what it's all about. So not winning the Grammy, but just really being immersed and serious about being in industry, and an industry that's serious about you.
So in that moment you felt, or maybe a little bit after, I'm sure in that moment you were a little bit numb, but maybe afterwards it was more of feeling seen, feeling recognized for what you're doing. Is that more or less it, you think?
Yeah, maybe not well seen, but knowing that um,
Hmm.
it's not just a hobby. It's something that I'm using whatever gifts that I got from my family, from my folks, and turning it into something, taking nothing and turning it into something, which is the most creative thing you can do. And then feeling good about what you've created and being proud of it, and then having those who love you being proud of it. It all kind of came together and saying,
Hmm.
this is where I need to be.
That's awesome. So that makes me think. So I want to fast forward, not a little bit, but a lot, um, about 30 years. So you had a Grammy nomination in 2012 that was spoken word album, and that was for your Fab Fan Memories stuff. So
Yes.
this one was pretty much entirely conceived by you, and you're the one who pursued all this. You're the one who got it to the nomination position, and I mean, so you, to me, it feels different. I'm not sure if it felt different to you, but to me, like just looking at how you went about this, it feels like it was entirely different. So I was just curious, what were your feelings about this nomination? You didn't win this year. I think Betty White actually pulled that one out. Um,
Yes,
which
we
I mean,
lost
I
to
can't
Betty
think of a
White.
better person to lose to. She's pretty amazing. So hats
Exactly.
off to her for
Exactly
sure
right.
for that. But
And it inspired a song that I wrote called the Betty White song. So,
everything's inspiration for you. I love it because yeah, I've noticed other things. Yeah, it's like you're just inspired by all these crazy things. Um, but yeah, just tell me how that one felt different, if it was different, or if it even felt different.
well, it was a little different because, as I said, I'm really a one-man operation. But in this case, there were three other guys, the guys in my band, and if it were not for me being in that band, I wouldn't have gotten the inspiration or the idea to do this album, because I was trying to get the Wanna Beatles work and get their name out there. And I joined a meetups group in Nashville for people who love the Beatles. And I wasn't hard to do because I love the Beatles. But I was listening to at every meeting, everybody would introduce themselves. Hi, my name is, and the first time I saw the Beatles, I was here, and this happened. And I'm listening to these stories. And, that's a great story. And then came another one.
Sounds like a
That's an
very
even
bizarre
better
AA
story.
meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But these were all fans. These were not celebrities. And I said, boy, I had it tucked in the back of my mind that said this would be a great album or a great recording for people to listen to, especially if you're a fan. So that was where that happened. But so, and the production, the production chores were shared by myself. I mean, I did a lot of work interviewing these people, getting their stories, recorded, and then putting together. But the guys in the band, they were a part of it, and they were helpful, and they were excited about it. Oh, well, not at first. They said, "Oh, Dennis is up to another harebrained scheme. What's he try getting this into?" We're musicians. We don't want to be a spoken word recording, but when we were all walking the red carpet, I think they felt
Hmm.
pretty good about it.
So I think I think I saw somewhere. Yeah, you said that you were at that meeting. You heard all these amazing stories. And you thought, wow, I would really love to kind of capture that and then share that back out. Um, was there, obviously it was an album, so it was kind of short, so you couldn't fit everything in there. You got was it George Harrison's sister to be kind of the narrator on that?
Yeah, I felt it needed some glue to hold everything together for to transition from one interview to another. And we were thinking, who can we get? Well, I don't think Paul McCartney is going to do it. Um, and we had met Louise Harrison maybe a couple of years before that at
Mm.
a Beatles festival. Um, and she was speaking there, and we briefly met her, but I approached her and she was interested. Um, there's a lot more story to that. You'll have to have me back because it's a long story, but suffice it to say that there were bumps in the road, but eventually, we came to an agreement with her, and she recorded it. Actually, she was in where's that town? I can't think of it now, but she was working with another Beatles band. She was kind of like their moderator when they did their shows, and so that's where the rub was, because they said, well, we don't want you working with this band. And I had to convince them, well, not really working with the band, I play in the band, but she really added a lot to it. And she added some authenticity to it, because she was there, she was in the middle of Beatlemania, and so she got to walk the red carpet with us. But she was a character in some ways. We were interviewed. When you walk down the red carpet, there are all these little booths that you stop in, and there's CNN they want to interview, and here's another company. So we walked into a booth, and the host had the microphone. He said, "Tell us, Miss Harrison, what are you excited to be here at the Grammys?" And she said, "Not really. I don't believe all these people are phony people. I like the good people, the people of the earth." And we say, "No, say something nice."
That's probably the soundbite that got played, though. That's the kind of stuff I'm sure that they want to play.
Somewhere somebody's got it.
I mean, it was an awesome get. And imagine that your persistence was able to get somebody. I would have never thought it, Dennis.
Well,
but something that really
I try.
When you were telling me about all these people standing up and telling their stories, the first thing that popped in my mind is that would probably make for a pretty good podcast, actually interviewing these, because I know that there were probably hundreds of people you could have interviewed, and there's absolutely no way you could have fit them all on the album. So,
all right, yeah. Well, hundreds, thousands, maybe. Yeah, no, that would be fascinating to have a themed evening of people telling their stories. I mean, maybe you'll hear some of the same ones, but I mean, they're just priceless stories. The girl who the Beatles arrived in New York, and they stayed at a hotel, and then they did their shows, and then they left. This girl snuck into the hotel where they had stayed, and she paid a chambermaid like $10, said, "Please let me go in their room," because they hadn't cleaned up the room yet. And she got into the room. She took a big jar with a top that you screw off, and she just scooped some air out of the room and put the cover on. And that's her story. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
That's wild.
And there are stories like that, and even better ones. So
I think,
yeah, Bad Fan Memories, the Beatles Bond, and that was the name I came up with it because I thought it said what the album was about.
I could definitely see myself weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, listening to you just talk to folks about their memories. So not to say that you need anything else on your plate, but I think that would actually be pretty cool to listen to.
Indeed.
I could be on board with that. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, let's do it.
So did this one feel better, the same, different? Because it sounded like you had to really, I don't know. It sounded like a lot of work on the previous Grammys, and I'm sure, probably an equal or more amount of work, but it sounded like you had to do more campaigning to kind of get this one going. Do you feel this nomination was more special than actually winning a Grammy in some respects?
Well, I really hoped we would have won. I'm glad Betty White won, even more glad now, probably. But when I listened to the other entries, and I say this with some modesty, I know the work, I know what those people would have to have done to get their recordings done for audiobooks, and they're fine. But this was really like a creative montage, because it was all these interviews, and then there was the narrator, and then there was musical background, and then there was transitional music, and then there were a couple of songs thrown in. It was like this pie that had to be built and baked. And so I think in that particular category, which is spoken word, I mean, I think we were spoken word on steroids. And I think it was very, I mean, it was, let me backtrack, because it was amazing that we got into the finals, because there were a lot of entries, and a lot of people were entering audiobooks like Betty White, but I don't know what that, I mean, there was a president who had read an audiobook, and all these notable, it's like harkens back to the Sesame Street experience. There's no really good reason why we should have stood out. And so it was amazing that we got that far. I'll tell you what's different. I wanted us to win that Grammy for the other guys in the band, because they had not had that experience of winning it. And I think it would have been really, really special for them. So I wish that would have happened, because I have it. If I never won another Grammy, I have that experience, but they didn't. So that's the difference, I think.
I like that. That wanting to share in the experience. Like, I know for me, like, I can go and I can do something, I experience something new, and that's great. But when I have a partner with me, when I have my real partner is with me, it seems like it's, the sum is what, or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, sort of thing. So yeah, to do that with your band,
Sure.
I'm sure would be, just so much more of an incredible experience. That's really cool. I could dig that. So something else I think so. When I was digging around, I saw that your band Wanna Beatles was there. You were, you're a Beatles tribute band, for those who obviously couldn't tell from the punny name there. But Paul McCartney was going to be there at the same one, and you guys put on a campaign to meet Paul, and I couldn't see anywhere if you guys actually met him or not. So did that come to fruition?
No, we still would like to meet Paul. But man, we tried. We wrote this little song called "We Want to Meet Paul." We made a video, which you can see. It's on YouTube. It's got quite followings. But we hope that. And then I tried, of course, to get to Paul, and he was very shielded, and of course he was on the show, so we hoped maybe we'd run into him, but he was doing things before the show that were going to be broadcast, and we were kind of in the audience, but we were about 300 yards away from him, so that we breathed the same air. I should have gotten a jar in. So it's kind of a running gag for us. People ask us, "Have you met Paul yet?" And said, "No," but he's still with us, and as long as he's here, there's always a chance.
Yeah, that's interesting. I got to see him in Memphis at the FedEx Forum one time, and I was amazed. Like, at his age, like, the performance he put on was pretty incredible. Like, he was just going and going and going, and the little interstitial pieces, he was talking to the crowd, and it's like, man, I don't know where that guy gets his stamina.
And if you observed, he never even stopped to have a drink of water.
Yeah,
throughout the whole 3 hours. I think it's because my theory is that when he was young, and they played all those shows in Hamburg, which were like, they had to play like for 6 hours in a row. He just got used to being on stage that long and being able to endure and keep things going. And he's a very motivated guy as well, and he really is dedicated to giving his audience the best that he has. So, yeah, I'm glad you got to see that, because I've seen him twice, and it's like you almost feel bad for him at the end. It's like, okay, you've given us so much, you can rest now. Stop the show. But
it was pretty incredible.
So he's amazing. He's
this
amazing.
all leads to me, right? I mean, you've been in the Wanna Beatles for, what, between 20 and 30 years, something like that?
Oh, no, it's not that long. Good golly. It's more like
Okay.
14
Well,
years
with COVID
now.
factored in,
But
it's at least
it's a long
19, I
time.
guess. It's time dilates and stretches right there. You got way longer. So 14 years. That's
Right.
it's a pretty long time to dedicate to any one thing. And I'm assuming you've been a Beatles fan for a really long time, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So
Since
what
I
is
was a
it that
kid.
you love so much about the Beatles that you would actually be in a tribute band?
Well, I mean, from a adult perspective or a kid's perspective, I mean, you know what? I didn't start out liking the Beatles. I remember when they came out, and I was what in the sixth grade or something, and all the girls were going crazy over them, and so I was like the anti-Beatles. I said, "Oh yeah, well you're not so good," and but then my older brother took me to see A Hard Day's Night, and I'm hearing the songs, saying, "Wow, these songs are catchy. They're I mean, I didn't know what a well-written song was, but at that age, but I knew somehow instinctively these are good songs, and the performances are good, and the vocals are great, and the the sound is like just coming out of the speakers. So that there was a moment there where I became a believer, a Beatles believer, and now the older you grow, if you're a Beatle fan, you just have to get your hands on anything you can that tells about their secrets. How did they do this, and why did they write that? And I just was given for my birthday Paul McCartney's huge collection called The Lyrics, where he talks about why he wrote the song. And I haven't had a chance to take it out of the box yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Interesting. So how did you end up meeting up with these other fellas in the band?
Oh, well, that's a good story. I was living in Nashville at that point and doing regular music gigs, playing, parties and restaurants. So I had a gig at a Mexican restaurant where I can bring 3 other guys in to play with me. And it was 2 of the guys were the guys that are still in the Wanna Beatles, and one guy is not in the group now, but he was a regular musician that I work with. So we were playing just songs from the Great American Songbook, one after another, Over the Rainbow, My Funny Valentine. And then I said, hey guys, let's play a Beatles song. So we did, and it was fun. And so the audience was kind of reacting to it. So I said, hey, do you know this one? And we did another Beatles song. By the end of the night, people were saying, yay, Beatles. So I went to the manager of the club or the restaurant, which was a Mexican restaurant. And I said, hey, how about a Beatles night here once a month? And he said, sí, Beatles and fajitas. And that's how it got started. And then we never expected it to turn into an income producing and fun kind of experience. But we started getting gigs as a result of that. And so now we've parlayed it into other things. And of course, the Grammy experience. And we've been on national television. And it's a
That's
heck
cool.
of a ride. And it's fun. Sometimes I think it's the best gig I ever had.
Do you feel like it pulls together things like from all facets of your life and kind of sticks them all right there together?
Yeah, I mean, especially in music, because when I worked in New York, I was playing as a sideman for lots of different orchestras and agencies, and some of the guys I worked with had been with Benny Goodman and the big bands, and I learned all these songs, and I watched how people conducted a party, how they went from one song to another. They would read the crowd and say, oh, this crowd is ready for an up-tempo song, and okay, that's enough. Now we're going to do a ballad. So I picked up on all that, and I bring that to the Wanna Beatles, because I look at a lot of Beatle bands, and they kind of, it almost look like drudgery to me. They kind of have non-expressions on their faces, and they're playing, okay, now we're going to do the next song. Hope you like it. And I think I bring a little bit of the showbiz pizzazz to it, because I coach the guys in the band. I said, okay, guys, we have to smile. I mean, I know you're having a good time inside, but now you have to show it outside. And the drummer always, David, he gets on my case. He said, okay, you want me to play drums with one hand, want me to play keyboard with the other hand. You want me to sing all these impossibly high parts and harmonies, and you want me to smile at the same time? Yes, I do. So I think I bring those experiences to our performances, and I think people say that's what they like about us. They like the chemistry, and they like some of the weird arrangements we put together of the songs and how we smash one up with the other. And so I'm proud of what we do. I think we got our Cuban born drummer playing British music says we're like lightning in a bottle. And the other side of that's a hard thing to sell, because I'll call places, say I've got this great Beatle band. They say, oh, we just had a Beatles band. So I said, well, this group is different. Well, how is it different? If you say lightning in a bottle, well, what does that mean? And it's when you've seen it, then okay, well, now we get what you were talking about. But as far as me being the frontline salesperson, it's challenging. Some ways more challenging than other things I've done.
It
would be nice if everything was just easy.
Yeah. Well, it's just everything I hear you say basically sounds like it's predicated off of your sheer determination. Just you beating your head against the brick wall over and over to get this stuff to work.
Yeah, but this is good. This is therapy for me. Getting it all out. I'm seeing a pattern here, which you've exposed, and saying, "Oh no!"
I love it. It just sounds like you've got this engine that's on full throttle, or maybe it's a wood chipper. It's everything you throw at it, you just tear it to pieces. Just like you sink your teeth in, and just follow this thing through fruition. And I mean, I think everybody who's successful, or every organization or every group or every band, has to have some motivating factor that's in there, always pushing, always trying to be better, always trying to do more. And I am definitely still looking for somebody to help push me along to be greater and better and more. But no,
I'll get out my whip.
I mean, that's why people go to the gym and get a trainer, right? Because if it was easy just to do on your own, you wouldn't need somebody to help you. And so it's
right.
It's interesting. So I see that pattern in you. I see that drive, that push. Now what's really curious to me is where does that necessarily come from? And it sounds like a lot of it came from your mom, like a lot of that determination.
So yeah, maybe now that we talk about it, I would think so. And I just built upon it. And then the reward system, if you build it and it comes true, and then you feel good, then you got to do it again. So
we're all I've heard some people say it's like, oh, you definitely got that from your parents or whatever. But I think your parents kind of plant seeds and you grow from there. Somebody I heard who said it probably in my favorite way ever is they said, you're born looking like your parents and you die looking like the choices you made in your life, all the decisions you made in your life. So it's, they start you off, right? They kind of plant a seed, and then, you develop this life, you take all these diverging paths and then figure out who you are. And at the end of it, they may have started you somewhere, but you finish on your own in your own way. And it sounds like maybe your mom planted that seed of determination, but you really grew it into something that's blossomed into something that's made so many amazing songs and helped a lot of different people flourish. And what I love to hear too is that that a rising tide lifts all boats. You want to bring everybody with you, right? You want to bring your band with you. You want to that Grammy experience you're trying to share. So some people are single-minded and they're only looking through their eyes, and I need to get me here, but you're taking people along with you. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I want my projects to succeed more than I do me, I guess. I don't have to be the center. I mean, I think I started getting into music or recording so that I was on the production side, but not the star of the show. I don't think anymore. I have to admit, I do enjoy performing with the Wanna Beatles and coming up with shtick and comedy bits. And when it works, it feels good. But and it's great when after the show, people say, "Oh, you brought back so many memories for us." I mean, that feels good. But I think I'm just the vessel, the vehicle for them to get that. It's not because Dennis is the star of the show. I mean, especially in the Wanna Beatles, because each one of us, we are closely interdependent on the other. The things that we've created from our musical arrangements, you take one guy away and it's pretty tough to get through
Sign
it.
of a good manager is giving credit to the team as opposed to themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm more like I'm thinking about the latest Mr. Rogers project I did. Um, I want it to succeed, and if my name is never mentioned, that's okay because I know what's on that record, and I know I know what went into it, and I can pat myself on the back. But but first, the project has got to succeed.
So you want your art to get out there and be seen and grow and flourish. Is that the legacy you want to leave? Is through your various works?
I think so. I'm still trying to figure out what to do about legacies and what's beyond, because you know I mean I hope there's a heaven. I hope that George Gershwin is hearing his songs played like every second of the day, and but I don't know. I don't. I'm still trying to figure that out because I have in this room I've got tons and tons of music and collections and things like that, and I don't want it to get thrown out into the trash. I want something. I'm looking for places to put it where it'll be appreciated and help another generation of musicians and artists and songwriters. So anyway, I'll get back to that. I'm working on it.
So you mentioned your son earlier. I'm just curious, what does he think about all this stuff? Like you playing with your band. Like to me, like I can't even fathom what that would be like to see like a parental figure like going out and like gigging and doing all this other stuff and just being like prolific music composer and producer or whatever you want to say. Like just how does he view it? Like when you look through his eyes, what does he see?
Well, I should get him and let him answer that. So I don't want to speak for him, but I think, first of all, he's really not interested in the music business, which probably my fault because when he was a baby in his crib, I would lean over his crib and I'd whisper in his ear, "Doctor, lawyer," and that didn't happen. But and for a while he was playing drums. He was good at it, but he's part of this generation which is absorbed with video and things like that, and he's trying to find his way now. He'll be graduating college this spring, and he's not sure what is happening for him next. So, but as far as the music part of it, he's not a demonstrative person. He's not effusive, but I think I know that deep down he's proud. I asked him to help me. We did a gig and we needed somebody to run our PowerPoint cues, and he agreed to do it. And something that he said to my wife indicated that they're pretty good. So I don't know he'd go out of his way to tell me that because that's just the age thing of where he's at. But I think he feels it. He better.
Well, I like to think that probably you as a dad, at home at the soccer game, whatever it is, eating lunch, you're one person, and then when they see you turn on, because when anybody's performing, they're not the same person, right? Whether you're putting on a uniform or it's just an invisible one that you put on, you become this other person, and this performer, and you exude all this energy and and you just become this other person. I think it's like, I think it can be like a very pivotal moment for kids to like see their parents in that environment, like this, all of a sudden they're looking at a stranger. Right. And it, to me, like that probably shows the kid that, wow, there's so much more depth in this person than I had ever realized was, cause we're always just dad. We're always just mom. We're always just this one little person they put in a box. And I think it can really expand kind of their mind a little bit whenever those sorts of things happen. That's awesome that you actually got him like immersed enough to see that.
Yeah. Well, when he was 5 years old and the Wannabes were playing at a restaurant, he was our sales manager. He would take our T-shirts and go from table to table. And we were making sales in those days. He was a little adorable kid. I think, although he might be reluctant to talk about that, I think he appreciates that as being part of his.
Yeah, I'm sure it made for some interesting stories, if nothing else.
Oh yeah, there are enough stories. But to answer your question, yeah, I think most of the time, my coming down and working on this project and. I think there was a point like my wife would come down often and say, well, what are you working on? Let's hear it. And now at this point, there have been so many projects. She doesn't come down as often as she used to. It's like, what are you working on? Another project. Okay, good. Enjoy. Let me know when it's over.
Yeah, I suppose you probably get kind of callous, numb to it. Do you feel like you get to where you just go into a mode where you're moving through the motions, or are you still pretty present, like when you're doing that stuff, like when you're producing?
Well, that's a great question. I think as of late, because some of these things are repetitive, like what I just worked on an album, not of my songs, but recording Latin flavored Christmas songs, which is an interesting task. And there was some challenges with that too, but for a lot of it, it's okay. You get the arrangements, write the arrangements, book the recording studio, get the musicians, mix the song. I mean, what's going to happen next. So some of it seems like formula, and I say to myself, okay, what's the challenge in this? I know how to do this already. What's the challenge? But then at the end, when I'm listening back to what we did, it said, oh, well, it turned out pretty good. I guess it really was worth doing, and I feel better about it. But I have wandering thoughts about, for years I've thought, I would love to write a Broadway show and never quite get around to it. Maybe someday still, but my problem is when things come across my desk, I have trouble turning them down. So that means there's really no time to write that Broadway show. So, and I've been thinking about just writing a journal of kind of like, I may have to call you and ask if I can get a copy of this recording so I can relive all these things that, you're making, and just so that someday if I have grandchildren, they can have an idea of who I am or who I was. So,
what's interesting to me too is to hear who you are in your words, right? Because if anybody else tries to describe you to, say, grandkids or things like that, it's their version, right? It's never straight from the source. And so that's something I like, is to really hear who somebody is in their own words, from their voice. And you're talking about, writing something on Broadway. I think of anybody I've talked to that can manifest it, I'm pretty sure you're that guy. So I believe in you, and I would be curious to see what happens there. But I guess we're getting close to time, so I don't want to burn you down too much more, because I could just talk at you forever. But something I've noticed you say kind of a couple of times is that when you produce something, when it's all said and done, you look back and it almost sounds like you're a little surprised at how good it turned out. Do you find that, not to say that, you don't think it's going to be good, but it sounds like you're surprised sometimes by how good it actually is. Is that a common thing for you?
I think so. I think it's because you're so wrapped up in just doing it and getting it done. And of course, you're listening to it towards the end and you're making decisions about how it sounds. And but you can't relax enough to appreciate it as a consumer or as a listener, an average listener would. So I feel that usually after a week or 2 weeks have gone by, I'll take it out again and said, "Oh, okay, it was as good as I hoped it would sound," and that's very satisfying. So yeah, I think your assessment is
I
correct.
think that's awesome that you can actually distance yourself from it, because I think I have some feeling about where you're at. Usually it's like when I'm working on a project, my face is so close to it that I can't step back and see the whole thing. Even with time, I have trouble still being kind of like, being able to look through somebody else's eyes and try and be fresh and clean on it. It's like, so I've worked in IT like pretty much my entire life. And so whenever I watch a TV show or a movie and you see a scene where people are hacking, I can't pull myself back enough to like look at it just like, this is ridiculous. This is the dumbest thing ever. I'm sure it's how like a brain surgeon feels when they see a medical drama on TV. They're like, this is so dumb. It's like you just understand it so intrinsically that you can't separate yourself from it. So I think that's cool that you actually can step back far enough and get enough distance for yourself that you could still appreciate it. That's something that I haven't been able to get to yet. And I think that's really cool that you can do that.
Well, I don't deserve the entire compliment because now when I don't go out to see bands a lot, but I was at a friend's daughter's wedding and there was a band playing. I thought, no, they shouldn't be doing that now. They should be doing a ballad now. Why are they doing that? No, they sound a little too loud. No, they're hurting my ears. So it never goes away.
Yeah, that stuff gets in your bones. It just doesn't leave sometimes. But that's cool.
Does.
That's cool. All right. So like I said, I try and be extremely respectful of time. I'm like a very prompt person. So
could we talk about
absolutely?
One
Yeah.
thing, though,
because we're not completely done. This is your party. I'm just here.
Oh well, no. I don't want to spoil the party, but you know what they say: never overstay your welcome, or you'll never be welcome to stay over. I think that was Groucho Marx, but it kind of dovetails because we were talking about me wanting the project to be successful as opposed to shining light on me specifically. And I feel that way most of all about this latest Mr. Rogers album I did, which looks something like this cover here. You see it? There we go. And it's my little formula. It's got all these different people, Kelly Pickler, Lee Greenwood, who wrote God Bless the USA, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees. If you're a Monkees fan, I got to work with my childhood idol. Let's see, Tom Bergeron, who you don't associate with singing, but because he was host of Dancing with the Stars and America's Greatest Videos, but he's a good singer and he's an even better whistler. So anyway, the Cowsills, if you remember them, the song I Love the Flower Girl, it was used in Dumb and Dumber. So anyway, all these people, and the album really turned out as I hoped it would. And it was even more satisfying because this particular album, normally I'm a hired gun, or like in the other albums, like the Mr. Rogers album I did prior to it, there was a gentleman who backed the album, who put up the money for it, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I had started this album thinking, well, that's going to happen again this time. Well, it didn't quite happen that way. So I am the record company on this. I am the financier of it. So there was that additional pressure, but and there's even more compelling part of the story. The Mr. Rogers people who I knew back in the day, they're not there anymore. And a new production company, which is taken over the name Fred Rogers Productions, I told them about this album, and I got a call from the president of the company. He said, Dennis, We know who you are. We know what you've done. We know what you're planning on doing. We're not interested, and actually would prefer that you didn't do it at all. And that was a dark day. That was why? This is your Fred Rogers company. You're protecting Fred's legacy, and a great part of this legacy is his music. Why wouldn't you want this to happen? And I'm still speculating about that. I think it's because they were concentrating on what they do best, which is children's television, coming up with new TV shows and like Disney, putting the Mr. Rogers name on it. But they're not doing anything with his music, and they're waiting until, I guess, they get a great idea. Well, I can't wait that long. So I decided, in spite of the fact that I didn't have the great support that I had last time, which included Fred Rogers' widow, who said she loved my album, and she said Fred would have loved it too. So that was what kept me going. So we've done this album, and we put it out, and it came out like just when COVID was starting. So there was a lot of distractions that I feel it didn't get the attention that it deserves. So I'm hoping your listeners will check it out. This is my unabashed endorsement, and just saying, we have a website for it. So if you go to thankyouMrRogers.com, you can actually hear cuts from it. And if you're a Fred Rogers fan, I think you'll appreciate that we took Fred's music, which is great music, really underrated music, because he was a gifted songwriter. And we've done new arrangements, fresh new arrangements with little pop and versions of it. And there's even Latin version of it. It's just a fun album, and with the strength of all these artists who loaned their talents to it, and the musical arrangements, I think it came together beautifully. I'm very proud of it. So I'm going to put my pride aside and say, check out the album. If you would all like Mr. Rogers, and who doesn't like Mr. Rogers, I think you'll appreciate it, and you'll hear his songs in a new light, which I'm hoping that he's up there smiling down, because he loved songwriting. It was his first love, and I think he will be so enthralled to see his songs performed by other people than the way we're accustomed to seeing them, which is by him in his sweater singing them, being perfectly charming, but not maybe seeing the scope of, or not imagining that his songs could sound like this. So that's my little plug. Sure. Thank you.
Right here at the end, I usually say, is there any particular way you would want people that hear this out on the internet, wherever they happen to be, to interact with you, or anything specific you want them to go to? And it sounds like, first and foremost, pop over to thankyouMrRogers.com, right?
Yep, that would be a great place to start. And you can also see interviews with the artist. It's kind of got a lot going for it. And in fact, because I believe in Mr. Rogers' legacy, his musical legacy, I've started a grassroots campaign to have him inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. You'd think that would be a no-brainer, but it's not. And there's a place there you can actually vote on this petition, and the more votes we get, I'm going to take that to the powers that be and say, Fred needs to be in this organization. So that's hopefully cool. That will happen too.
So other than that, you have thewannabeatles.com, right? And DennisScott.net. Yes. And you have to have the for the Wanna Beatles. Otherwise it takes you to some group in Norway. So it's thewannabeatles.com. And you see you can see that Betty White video the song that we performed together. And you can hear We Want to Meet Paul for our little adventure to meet Paul McCartney. And so that's fun. And my website is just a collection of lots of different projects I've worked on over the years, and you might find it enjoyable. Well, Dennis, I sure appreciate you coming on. I thank you for your time and attention. And I know, again,
I'm thanking you. This is This, I'm going to say this, and I'm not blowing smoke. This is probably one of the best and in-depth and insightful interviews I've ever had. I mean, you are gifted at doing it, and you made me feel comfortable and spill the beans on things and reach out to things I haven't thought about. And that's totally the mark of a great interviewer. So thank you for having me on.
I appreciate the
show.
comments and compliments. They weren't just comments, they were compliments. Feedback is a gift. That's what I always tell people. So that's permission to say any mean thing you like. So feel free, Dennis, after this. Not on air. Don't do it while I'm recording. So again, thank you so much. And I'm going to hit stop on all the recording stuff real quick.